哪个地方都有人，哪个桥底下没有人？每个桥底下都有人，随便去看一个，哪怕就是10米长的桥底下都有人。
What I'm showing you here is something you're not allowed to see in China. And especially people outside of China are forbidden to see or know about it. Some of this footage I filmed myself in the biggest and brightest cities of China. Some of it has been shared with me from my friends in China, and some of it has leaked onto the Chinese internet only to be quickly censored. But once it has been posted to sites outside of China, it's very difficult for the Chinese government to get it removed. This is China's hidden shame. One of the things they fight tooth and nail to ensure is suppressed and never seen by the outside world. China has a colossal homeless issue. And before anyone starts to point fingers and say, what about America and LA? Don't worry, I've got a segment just for you at the end, including footage of the homeless camps and so on in LA that I filmed myself, so you'll be satisfied. Now let's talk about China and get America out of your eyes and brain and thoughts for just a minute here, because guess what? There are actually problems in other parts of the world, and these problems are being hidden from you so that your own problems can be weaponized against you. Without beating around the bush here, China hides its homeless problem. How do they hide their homeless problem? Well, first of all, they make sure that any homeless encampments are temporary. If people are camping under a bridge, if people are camping anywhere, they send the security guards and the police to move them along. They spray them with high-power hoses to get them out of the way. They blast loudspeakers in their ear. It's illegal to set up a tent anywhere in a Chinese city, and they will move you along. So the homeless community is more like a transient nomadic community in China, having to move from place to place daily, find a spot where they can quickly set up their blanket and sleep in an alcove, something like that, because they know at any minute the security guards or the police are going to come and move them along. Another way they get rid of homeless people in the big cities is to force them out. I have some privileged information. I used to be very close friends with a reporter for a prominent newspaper in Shenzhen. Probably why I've been in that newspaper more than 13 times. It's kind of stupid, but there was a period when I was very famous in the city. Anyway, during a discussion, the reporter explained to me exactly what happened to the homeless people. Because I asked, look, I see homeless people sometimes, but especially with the large population in China, how is it, and the migrant workers and so on, how is it that you don't see homeless tent encampments and things like you see in LA or, Kensington Avenue, for instance? Well, it's simple. In Shenzhen anyway, it gets bitterly cold in the winter. It's a tropical, hot, humid place during the summer, which is ideal for people who just want to live outside, and you can go and sleep and hide in the park and sleep under a bush or something and you're totally fine. However, in winter, it's bitterly cold. So, of course, the local government has these sort of, for lack of a better word, homeless shelters. They're not really. They're called something else, something like a transient care facility type thing. And they offered to give free blankets and food to anyone who was cold and homeless. But anyone who turned up was simply detained. Yes, given blankets and food, but detained and then bussed out of the city. You see, the majority of homeless people in the cities, of course, are people that come from the rural parts of China, either seeking work or coming to beg professionally. There are many reasons why. But a lot of people, they get to the cities and they fall on hard luck because, you know what, there's a big problem with unemployment in China right now, especially amongst the youth. It's like 20%. So what happens is these people all came from very far away. All right, it's expensive for them to travel, to get to the city. Almost impossible in some cases. They save up, they borrow money, they hook or by crook. Some of them walk, cycle, do whatever they can to get to the big cities. So the local government enticed them in with blankets and free food, detained them, and then put them on buses and bussed them all the way back into the rural countryside. Think about it. You're homeless, you've got no money. You're put on a bus and sent 1,000 kilometers away from the city where you're homeless in. You have no means to get back. And that's how they get rid of them. They simply bust them out and drop them in the rural countryside, either their hometown if they're lucky, or somewhere close by, and then they're left to fend for themselves. And of course, it's almost impossible for them to make it back to the city from which they were bussed out of. So that's one way they get rid of the homeless people in the cities. But of course, the lure of making money in the big cities is too great. And that's also why you see so many beggars in China. Anyone who's ever visited China, it doesn't matter. Look, this footage that I'm showing you now, I filmed in Shenzhen, first-tier city. We're talking top of the pops. In fact, how about this? Here's some footage from Nanjing Road in Shanghai, which is the most cosmopolitan shopping area in China. Here we've got a woman digging in the trash for food there, which I filmed myself. And I mean, let's just take a look at the street full of beggars I filmed in Guangzhou, which, you know, Canton, the capital of Guangdong. Guys, this is a huge issue. This is stuff I filmed myself. But how about all these other clips that you see every once in a while? Well, people don't have a place to stay. They need to find a place to stay. They sleep under bridges. They sleep everywhere. Even though the government puts in everything they can to try and prevent homelessness, like these spikes under a bridge or these anti-homeless benches in the parks, and send out security guards and police with loudspeakers to chase off anyone who might try to sleep out in the open anywhere. I mean, it's really a game of hide and seek for the homeless population in China. But now that you've seen, and I hope that you can see that not only the footage I filmed myself, but the footage that Chinese people have filmed and put out there, before it gets censored, of course, and removed, I hope you can see that there really is a homeless problem in China. So why is China trying so hard to hide this absolutely irrefutable issue of homelessness in China? Well, it's quite simple, and it all has to do with Kensington Avenue in Philadelphia. Hey, it's me, the stereotypical cybersecurity hacker dude. Don't skip this. I'm actually a reformed hacker and wanted to give you some tips on how to stay safe on the World Wide Web. Your browser. It's how you interact with the internet, and it's the easiest way for us to exploit and gain access to what you do. We do this by sending hidden code and email attachments, trick you to click on links, hidden pop-ups, pop-unders, injected code that's invisible to you. We have a lot of nasty tricks up our sleeves, and although us pure hackers do it just to prove we're smarter than everyone else, there are those who do it in order to steal from you. Steal your money, your identity, and your dignity. And that is why us stereotypical cybersecurity hacker dudes suggest Guardio. It's a browser plugin that acts as your first line of defense, blocking malicious attacks before they even happen. Remember, our browsers contain all of our personal information, from our banking details, browsing habits, to our passwords. Guardio shields you from scam sites, phishing attempts, pop-ups, and will notify you in real time of information leaks connected to you. Guardio also has a brand new feature which monitors your email in real time for malicious emails that bypass your spam folder. Go to gar.io/SerpentZA and install Guardio. It takes 30 seconds to install, and one Guardio account covers 5 family members. Link is in the description below, and you'll get 20% off their already affordable monthly subscription. And now, back to the show. Yep, we've all seen the footage. We've all seen the drugged-up, zombie-looking homeless people ambling around the filthy streets of Kensington Avenue. In fact, I'd hazard a guess and say that there isn't a single person alive who has access to the internet, phone, TV, doesn't matter, who hasn't seen this footage, or at least isn't aware of the homeless problem in America. LA, tent cities, hell, I filmed some myself, here, as promised. I filmed this in LA when I was fetching a car a while ago, a car to buy for the car channel I was doing a few years ago. They exist. It's a problem. Everybody knows it's a problem. Because look, I make a video about homeless people in China. I bet you already down in the comments you can see, what about America? What about the homeless tent encampments in LA? Why don't you focus on that? Why don't you talk about America's homeless problems? I'll tell you why I don't talk about America's homeless problems. It's because every single mainstream media talks about America's homeless problems. Every single international media talks about America's homeless problems. Every single influencer on YouTube, Instagram, doesn't matter what, talks about America's homeless problems. Your mom on Facebook talks about America's homeless problems. Why do I need to cover something that's been covered to absolute death and is such common knowledge that a freaking cricket living under a rock in the middle of the Sahara Desert knows about it? No, I talk about the problems in China, and that's because nobody talks about the problems in China, and it is to the detriment of the Chinese people that are suffering, the homeless people in China who have been left disenfranchised, who are being power washed off the sidewalks, who are being detained, bussed back to the rural countryside, ignored, swept under the rug, treated like shit, and subhuman. That's why I talk about China, and I challenge you to talk about the homeless problem in China too. Do you have the strength to stand up to what the Chinese government's willing to do if you actually do talk about it? Do you have the strength to stand up to the army of propagandists that will come after you if you talk about it? I know I do. I've been doing it for years, and I've suffered greatly. I've taken massive hits against my reputation, massive hits against my family's safety, and massive hits against what I do. People out there targeting me personally, trying to intimidate me into silence because I happen to talk about the very real problems that China faces. And that is why your mom on Facebook, Joe Rogan, Philip DeFranco, CNN, mainstream media across the world is not talking about China's massive homeless problem. Because China is an incredibly opaque country. You cannot see in. Nothing is shared. Don't forget the massive, massive censorship apparatus which blocks 80 to 90% of the internet in China, blocks film, TV, radio, books, censors, education censors, everything. It works both ways. Not only do they prevent any news or unwanted information coming into China, they also prevent any unwanted information going out of China. Not only that, if the information does get out of China, they will send an army of propagandists and misinformation agents to attack whoever is saying and telling that news. And of course they can do that because they keep their doors closed. I'll give you an analogy. In a neighborhood, if one of your neighbors leaves his door open and his house is kind of filthy, everybody can look inside and they can point to that neighbor and say, he's kind of a messy guy. Look at his filthy living room. You can see it from his front door. But one of the neighbors who keeps his doors closed is even worse. In fact, his entire interior of his house is just rotten and disgusting. But because his door is closed, he can stand on his porch and point to that neighbor with the door open and say, look how messy that neighbor is. Look how disgusting he is. And everybody focuses on that neighbor instead of him. And that's what the Chinese government does by engaging on Twitter and social media across the world, pointing fingers at American homeless problems and pretending as if nothing like that happens in China. It's such a good tool at their disposal, so much so that the Chinese Foreign Ministry and Chinese officials constantly post about America's homeless issue. All the sycophants, propagandists and foreign propagandists that work for China constantly glorify China for having no homeless people and denigrating America and the West for not being able to control their homeless problem. Of course, this works very well if nobody can see the truth. So I hope I've been able to shed a little light on the truth here and irrefutably prove to you that China does indeed have a homeless problem. And it's not shiny and great and some sort of utopia where everybody's been lifted out of poverty. And I can say that for certain because I lived there. I can say that for certain because I still have friends and family there. I can say that for certain because I don't hide the truth because it's convenient and prevents me from being attacked. Anyway, guys, tough subject to talk about. My heart truly goes out to the homeless and disenfranchised people in China. Because not only do they have to deal with suffering, but they also have to deal with the fact that they're treated as if they don't exist and they're ignored. I've had some of the best interaction with the poorer people in China, the best interactions. I found them to be incredibly hospitable and incredibly generous with what very little they had. So my heart goes out to them once again. And I would like to say to all of you out there, stay awesome and don't let this bully of a government, this bully of an authoritarian dictatorship tell you what to think about your own country. And don't let them get away with hiding the missteps and the bad things that are happening in theirs. Until next time, you know the drill. As always, stay awesome. Now, of course, I'm not going to leave you on such a dour note. I actually have something very funny to show you. A CCP shill trying to pretend homeless people don't exist in China. And if you want to know more about this and see even more interesting and hilarious things, don't forget to tune in on Friday for the China show. Link is in the description.
And night to bring us food. And listen, they they are fast. You order something on Ethereum, which is the application for food, and like literally, I don't know, like 30 minutes later, you will have food delivered right at your door. Leon, thanks for that hearts. Why the hell is my camera not turning? Look at the love on the street. Yes, I have been to China Blogger News. I hope you present real fair news, my brother. Well, with 1.4 billion people, everything needs to be bigger. Yeah, true. But with 1.4 billion people, it's not every government that can have this law and order and awesome subways and awesome buildings and young mothers walking freely on or through crowded streets.